Hello everyone, my name is Juanita. I am a student of teaching English, and right now I'm going to talk about what communicative competence is. So, communicative language teaching involves developing language through interaction in meaningful context. It's not always the same. We are developing our language in always different contexts. So, this approach to teaching provides opportunities for learning that go beyond repetition and memorization of grammatical rules. So this central concept of the communicative approach to teaching a language is the communicative competence. That is the learner's ability to understand and use the language appropriately to communicate what they wanted to communicate. So it could be in different environments, like in school, in your house, if you are walking on the street, in a mall. So there is, like, as I said, different contexts. It's not always the same. So language learning process is also the ability to communicate competently, not the ability to use the language in a systematic way, like trying to imitate what what a native speaker is saying. So that's why the communicative competence focus on five uh, abilities. The first one is accuracy. Accuracy is how we use the grammar in order to make sense in what we are saying or writing. Um, the second is fluency. Fluency is to maintain the control in a conversation or to keep the flow in a conversation, and it's also to be aware what about what we are saying. It's not always talking like talking by talking. It's like having sense in what we are saying, have like coherence. The complexity is the third one, and it refers to how much language we have developed in our lives. How much do we know about some topics, or how much do we know about grammar and how we use it in a conversation. The fourth one is appropriacy. That is the ability to use the language according to the context. Like, for example, if you are talking about movies, then you need to know some vocabulary, some control of your language about movies. If you're talking about some things about school, then you have to know vocabulary and language about school. So we have to be able to speak and communicate in any situation. We have to be able to speak and communicate in any situation. Like, for example, in the work, on the street, in the mall, in your house. You need to use the language in different situations, not only the same one. The fifth one is the capacity. It's about how much we can express, how much we can say about something, how much do we know about something, how much control do we have of different topics. It's not, as I said, it's not only the same one. To understand better what communicative competence is, at this point, I'm going to give you an example. If a language learner is asked what they think the goal of a second language course is, they will probably answer that they want to know something about grammar, grammatical rules, vocabulary of the language. But it's not always that answer. Some people are practicing a second language because they want to communicate what they are thinking. They want to communicate something because they want to know anything about a different culture. For example, if they want to travel, they need to know something about the language of a native speaker of that place. So they need to know something about language and they want to communicate. So the goal of a language course is not always to teach grammar or vocabulary. At this point, fortunately, some courses of studying a second language has moved from purely teaching grammar and vocabulary to providing different skills for effective communication. A language course should not only have linguistic competence as its goal, but also communicative competence in general. For example, language learner needs to use the language not only correctly based on linguistic competence, but also appropriately based on communicative competence. Of course, that doesn't mean that we have to ignore what grammar and vocabulary involves in the practice of a second language. In fact, linguistic competence is one of the four components of communicative competence that are linguistic, sociolinguistic, discourse, and strategic competence. The first competence is linguistic, that is knowing how to use the grammar, syntax, and vocabulary of a language. Linguistic competence asks you a question. What words do I use, and how do I put them into phrases and sentences? The second one is sociolinguistic, is knowing how to use and respond to language appropriately. They give you the topic and the relationships among the people that are communicating something. So sociolinguistic competence asks you a question. Which words and phrases fit this topic? And how can I express a specific attitude when I need to? Attitude like courtesy, authority, friendliness, or respect. And how do I know what attitude another person is expressing? The third one is discourse competence. It's knowing how to interpret the larger context and how to construct longer stretches of language so that the parts make up a coherent whole. Discourse competence asks you, how are words, phrases, and sentences put them together to create conversation speeches, email messages, or newspaper articles? The fourth one and the last one is strategic competence. It's knowing how to recognize and repair communication breakdowns, how to work around gaps in someone's knowledge of the language, and how do I learn more about the context of that language. Strategy, how do I know when I misunderstood something or someone has misunderstood something? What do I say when that happens? And how can I express my ideas if I don't know the name of something or the right verb form to use? Another example of communicative competence could be in the classroom. Sometimes teachers use different ways of evaluate their students based on the activities that they do in the classroom. For example, role-play activities for practicing speaking or writing letters for practicing writing. It's not always using the same skills. It's always changing. It's always giving different activities for that to practice communicative competence. That, as a conclusion, communicative competence is the use of the language at any context, at any situation. It's not only based on linguistic competence. It's not only using grammar and vocabulary. It's using different ways of communicating. So that is communicative competence as a conclusion. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video.